back to Flock Talk. Today we are going to be teaching the birds how to use this. Those of you who have other pets at home may recognize this as being a canine or feline puzzle feeder, but today we are going to be repurposing it for birds. This particular puzzle here is called the Buggin Out puzzle feeder, and it is by the brand Pet Stages. Typically, these sorts of puzzle boards are used for dogs or cats, and you would scatter treats or their kibble in and amongst all the little holes and feeder bits here, and send it out for the animal to go sniff, paw at it, and push all the pieces around to help the food pop out so they can eat it. Obviously, this is a bird channel, so we are going to be using this for two teeny tiny birds today. In particular, we are showing tiny little Miss Mia here how to use this puzzle. When it comes to canine puzzle feeders, I find that most of them are really heavy or really bulky, really big, and the pieces can't be used for smaller birds like my tiny parrotlet or my small conure. This one, however, is entirely made out of plastic, and the pieces are incredibly light, which makes it very easy for them to use. They also don't have to pick up anything. The entire puzzle functions just by sliding, so it's nice and easy for them to use all their body weight just to push it, and there's no loose pieces and things for them to hurt themselves with or accidentally swallow. Additionally, this is not painted. All of the pieces are embedded with the color, so they can't just chip off the paint and accidentally swallow something that wouldn't be safe for them. Any sort of bits of hardware are not visible or reachable on the top of this puzzle, which I really like. The only part where there are some visible pieces of hardware is on the back, where you have a couple of screws, which they could access if they manage to flip the entire board over. So if you do have a larger parrot, I would maybe make sure that you only use this under supervision, but otherwise it is entirely safe for them to use. Just watch they don't accidentally catch any toes. Again, supervise them while they're using it. So to get started, I'm just going to go ahead and familiarize Mia with where the seeds are going to be when she solves this puzzle. So I'm just going to take this nice open little hole where the seeds end up being deposited, and I'm gonna one by one place them in that spot. Through this, Mia's gonna have a very strong understanding of where the seeds are going to be and where to look for them. Once we're really good there, where she's very motivated running to that spot, I'm gonna start covering up the seeds with that little leaf flap that's on the side there. I'm gonna start off just covering it a tiny bit and having her watch me put the seed there, and then I'm gonna start covering it more and more, so that way she's having to learn to push that leaf out of the way to uncover the seed. What this is doing is not only teaching her one aspect of this toy, but also encouraging her to look for things in this particular spot, even when they're not visible, if she doesn't see me put them there. She's just generally having to learn that there are going to be seeds and they're going to be hiding. She's not going to be able to see them, so she has to learn to push things around and explore her environment to uncover the seeds. Once I'm able to put these seeds in here and she is pushing that leaf over with vigor, with just absolute excitement, she is throwing that leaf as far as she can. We know she fully understands that in order to get the seed there, she's got to move this leaf. She knows the seeds are going to be in that spot, and we'll be ready to progress to the next stage, which is those little cups that kind of look like tiny little ladybugs. What I'm going to do is gently put this cup partially covering the hole, so that way she can push it over with her head and still kind of see the seeds in that little depository underneath. So that way she can kind of reach for the seed and accidentally push it out of the way. As she gains that understanding of thrashing that little ladybug out of the way and getting the seeds underneath, we can cover it more and more. If she really struggles with learning to push it out of the way, I will also help her, especially if she's grabbing it and doing the right thing, but just not quite moving it in the right direction. I will just gently push it with her, help her solve the problem, and she'll kind of learn from there and realize what to do in order to uncover the seed. We're just going to repeat this process. This is probably the most difficult part because it does involve grabbing a totally different object and throwing it out of the way in order to uncover the seed underneath. This can take a little while, especially since it is on this little sliding track. If the bird decides to try and pick it up or thrash it instead of just pushing it, it could get stuck and then it's not going to move the way the bird actually wants it to. So we're just going to repeat this process until she is very quickly throwing that ladybug to the side to uncover the seeds. It doesn't take her too long, as you can see here. I can fully cover it up, load it up, and she is moving it out of the way really reliably, which tells me that it's time to make this a little bit more challenging. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and take the seeds, load up that little ladybug, and leave it set partially back. I'm not moving it all the way to the end of the track, but I'm just going to put it about halfway over the little depository hole there. So that way she has to slide it towards the little depository hole and move it back. And this is a very complicated step because now she has to be the one depositing the seed in that hole and moving it back. Mia, thankfully, as a default response to trying to get food out of things, just grabs them and throws them around. So this works very well in her favor because she can just grab that ladybug, throw it around, and a little seed is going to pop out. Works perfectly for her. She's able to solve it. If your bird is really struggling with this transition here of having to grab the ladybug and move it over that little deposit spot, you can separately reinforce this. Click your clicker every time they touch the ladybug. Click it every time they move it towards that little embossed spot on the slider until the bird understands that grabbing the ladybug and sliding it towards that one spot is what's earning them the reward. Some birds may need it broken down that much. A lot of the time you will find that they're going to start trying to problem solve themselves and they'll just start doing anything they can think of in order to come to a solution here. They're going to thrash the toy around, they're going to grab the ladybug and try sliding it, they're going to try picking it up. So they most of the time will figure it out on their own, but some birds may need that little bit of extra help. Additionally, if every time they touch it, you help them move it in the right direction, they'll start to catch on as well. There's a bunch of different ways you can go about this. When Mia does get confused and you see her kind of push it to the side that she's supposed to, but not quite all the way, and then she brings it back and she sits there sliding it back and forth a couple times, but not quite bringing it all the way to the end, I do end up having to step in and help her just push it that little bit back to the end there because she's just not going far enough to deposit the treat. And just doing that one time was enough for her to understand that she wasn't pushing it far enough and that was the problem. Birds are very, very smart, so don't discredit them here. If they're getting confused, sometimes all they need is a simple demonstration, especially if your bird does have a history of having to do problem solving and foraging on their own. Odds are they're already accustomed to trying to figure out how to solve these problems. Birds who haven't had these sort of things before, though, may need a little bit more time and a lot more guidance. As they do more of these, you're not going to have to help them as much each time because they've got a large repertoire of things they have to solve the problem. So I've got Mia really reliably throwing this ladybug back and forth now, so I'm going to go ahead and add that leaf over it as well. In this circumstance, the leaf doesn't really do all that much. It just adds a little bit more force that's required because now she has to push the ladybug and the leaf at the same time. It doesn't really add much to the process, so there isn't really a whole lot you really have to do to show them to do this. If your bird understands that pushing the ladybug all the way to that hole in the end is what's depositing the treat, they're not going to have an issue putting that little bit of extra energy in to push the leaf out of the way. The one thing I will note with this particular puzzle feeder is to make sure that you don't line that leaf up perfectly straight. If you have it too straight, the way that the ladybug comes at it might be pushing it in a way that it can't rotate, and then the bird's going to get frustrated because they're doing the right thing and it's a matter of the leaf not being hit properly, so it's not spinning. So I always just kind of leave it offset that tiny bit, just so that way the leaf's going to twist easier, the bird's not going to get frustrated, and they're going to be able to solve the puzzle. So I would just keep that in mind when you're setting this up. Otherwise, that is it. So what I would do from here is go ahead and do this on a bunch of different ladybugs. As you see, I taught this entire thing on just one small track. So from here, I would go ahead and move on to some of the bigger tracks. I would move it onto different tracks and help her kind of generalize that treats can come from any one of these ladybugs. You may have to redo the process for a bunch of them. It does vary from bird to bird. Mia caught on pretty quickly as soon as she saw me putting seeds inside the ladybugs. She understood that seeds were inside of them, and she knew to thrash them around until she got them out. So it didn't take too much guidance from Mia to figure out how to solve this on all of the present ladybugs on the puzzle, but other birds might need a tiny bit more help. And that is it. This was incredibly quick for Mia to learn. As soon as food was involved, she was very excited and eager to hop on in there and figure out how to get it. Mia is no fool when it comes to foraging activities. She has been foraging for a very, very long time, so it doesn't take a lot for her to be able to figure things out. If you are trying this for the first time and don't do a lot of foraging activities with your birds, you may find that they need a tiny bit more encouragement. Just make sure that you are taking things slow with your bird, that you're making sure they aren't scared with any of the pieces before moving forwards, and that you are gradually introducing them to each aspect of the toy. Don't just throw it in there and expect them to know how to get it. they need help figuring it out. But that will do it for today's video, so thank you guys so much for watching. I had a lot of fun with this puzzle feeder. It's really nice being able to find different activities for them to do that aren't all the same sort of concept of trying to open a lid and get a toy or a treat out. This was a whole new different thing for them, and they both had a blast doing it. I ended up showing this to Newt after Mia's turn, and he caught onto it so quickly. I didn't even really have to show him what to do. He basically saw Mia do it a couple of times and just ran with it from there. So this was absolutely a blast. The birds really enjoyed it. They picked it up really quick, and now we've got an extra little thing that I could very easily use just to hide their pellets in and make just an everyday meal a little bit more fun for them. But that's gonna do it for today's video, so thank you guys so much for joining me here today, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.